guys, it's Brenda with Vintage Adventure, and I've got another ASMR reading for you. This one is a paper that I wrote in 1988 for Art 211. That was probably Ancient Art History class with Dr. John Bushin. Shout out to Dr. John. He's probably still living in Florida. Had such great professors in my undergraduate college career. But I'm going to try to decipher this. See Appendix A to translate. So that is the N sound. That little bar is the SH sound. Then we got the N sound again. And then that little half thing is the T. So N, ancient. Ancient? Because you don't use vowels in hieroglyphics. I'll show you what I'm writing. And then here we have this little basket is a K sound. The owl is an M sound, I think. The N sound again. The K sound again. That was the SH sound and the N sound. So ancient communication. Phonetically spelled. And then this little item is the TH sound. That is the R sound. And that bird is the W sound. Ancient communication through, and then an R and a T. Ancient communication through art, pictograms, cuneiform, and hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphs. Okay, let's begin. As a writer, I have decades of paper and publishing. It's a little bit scary going in my eBay room slash office slash chaos house of chaos. But we're going to read some of these papers. Here we go. Excuse me. Ancient people had a need to communicate with some permanence in order to establish tradition and to maintain their culture. As humans moved from a nomadic way of life to husbandry and agriculture, their need to share information became more important. The motivations for recorded communication perhaps differed: economic, educational, and spiritual, ritual, or magical purposes seem to have played major roles. Some scholars say that ancient humans had an instinct to record their activities and share them with others. Others say that humans began to record their activities based upon need as their way of life changed. This step, which prompted man to begin making pictures or recording stories, can be debated. What is known, however, is that humans began by using representative figures and symbols in recorded communication. Paleolithic art is considered by many to be the beginnings of written communication. The first of this art is believed to be pebbles found in the late 1800s in the Mas d'Azil cave in southern France. See Appendix B. The pebbles are painted with red ochre and earth pigment, and the designs on the pebbles are similar to cattle brands. Some scholars speculate that people used the stones as marks of ownership, although people were basically hunters and gatherers. Although the pebbles do not portray a realistic or recognizable image, others say that they were used as good luck charms relating to the sympathetic magic theory. The most popular theory relating to Paleolithic art, in which the artist communicator used a representational picture or symbol to serve as a sort of effigy. See Appendix C. Cave paintings found in Altamira are generally not thought to be storytelling communiques because of their location in the caves. The sympathetic magic theory tends to be believed as the motivation behind the paintings. An interpretation that the paintings served as an educational ceremony to teach young hunters to hunt is another possibility. In addition, the explanation of the paintings as a record of hunters' achievements can be also examined. Sexual connotations and the importance of the act of painting may also have played a role. Generally believed to be a record of man's daily activities, the Italian Alp rock paintings and murals show what life was like when man began to learn husbandry. As he used pictures and scenes to tell stories, this communicative art was before man began to apply symbols and develop writing. Pictographs. Writing began with representational pictures of people doing things, objects, and happenings. Communication in Paleolithic art and Mesopotamian and Egyptian cultures has developed primarily from picture writing. Two stages are associated with pictographs. The first stage is a representative picture or iconograph, which is a static impression and literal portrayal of an object or thing. A circle representing the sun is a typical example. When the circle has lines coming from it, it could represent light or day. This second stage modification is called an ideograph or logogram and is a symbol that represents an idea or abstract concept. This could be compared with modern logos. Only by repetition and familiarity does a viewer grasp the symbol's meaning. Once a pictograph loses its literal interpretation, it becomes an ideograph. As abstract words and ideas could be portrayed, ideographs made possible more complete stories than pictographs. As representational pictures and ideographs become fixed symbols for a culture's communication, analytic writing developed as in the Mesopotamian and Egyptian cultures. This primitive picture writing is now on its way to transitional writing, which includes pictures, symbols, and sound. Cuneiform. Disadvantages to pictographs and ideographs because of differences in handwriting and interpretation led to the development of a shortened version of picture writing about 3500 BC in Mesopotamia. The agricultural civilization of the Sumerians made it an economic and administrative necessity for the people to use some form of record keeping for their daily transactions. As they imported many raw materials from other regions, they found it necessary to keep records of goods on wet clay, which was then sun-dried. The first Sumerian tablets that were found were totally pictographic. Drawing pictures and curves on wet clay did not come very easily, and interpretation was a problem. This cuneiform as it evolved. The agricultural civilization of the Sumerians made it an economic and administrative necessity for the people to use some form of record keeping for their daily transactions. As they imported many raw materials from other regions, they found it necessary to keep records of goods on wet clay, which was then sun-dried. Oh, I read that already. Sorry about that. Okay, here we are. See Appendix D. To alleviate this problem, the Sumerians developed a style of writing which used combined short, straight, horizontal, and vertical lines and angles to represent those pictures in a shortened fashion called cuneiform. The pictographic symbols then became abstract and didn't really represent a literal visual element. Here's the original, later, and then cuneiform and what it meant. They then progressed to using rebus devices, combining both picture and sound writing. Perhaps as their economy and civilization progressed, they realized that they could represent objects with similar sounding words. Moreover, memorizing more than 2,000 symbols was probably realized as being a disadvantage. This evolution is a critical step in the development of a phonetic alphabet. This evolution combines stylized pictographs and phonetics, reduced the 2,000 symbol alphabet to about 600. As more people became scribes, and as the symbols became more abstract and uniform as in an alphabet, it became easier to decipher the communication. Many words were used to double up as parts of words or objects and were given a determinative symbol to clarify the meanings, as in Egyptian hieroglyphic writing, which was being developed around the same time. Determinatives were generally symbols for something like place before the name of a city or man before the name of a man. Because writing was more simplified and uniform, literary tablets became important. Because the writing was more simplified and uniform, literary tablets as well as religious and economic tablets became important. When the Babylonians conquered Samaria about 1720 BC, they adopted the cuneiform style of writing because it was successful. To write and read was the duty of all Babylonians except in the lowest classes. In contrast to Egypt, where only scribes and government officials were literate. Schools were attached to temples and run by priests. Every city had its house of tablets or library. Cuneiform simplification was taken a step further by the Babylonians. They reduced the Sumerian 600 symbols to about 350. King Hammurabi's law code is an excellent example of Babylonian cuneiform in combination with a relief carving of Hammurabi receiving divine instruction. The tall, cylindrical tablet of diorite was established for the common Babylonian to understand the laws of the land. Here's Hammurabi's Code of Laws. It was not until the later half of the 1700s that cuneiform was deciphered. George Grotefend, a German schoolteacher, decided to try his luck at deciphering the mystery of the wedge-shaped writing. He noticed that the symbol pi shape appeared quite frequently in the 539 BC tablet he studied. Guessing the symbol stood for king, Grotefend used it as a starting point. He jotted down lists of rulers during that time period on the tablet and found one word with a symbol before it that had 7 letters. None of the names he had written down had 7 letters. Suddenly he remembered that Darius was spelled Darhus in Old Persian. The spelling fit the 7 letters. He then tried this bit of decoding on other names and it worked. Grotefend subsequently turned his discovery over to the Academy of Sciences in Göttingen, and other scholars then spent many years deciphering centuries of cuneiform writing all the way back to the origins of Sumerian pictographs. Some forms of cuneiform are still under investigation. Hieroglyphs. The Egyptians were developing their writing about the same time as the Sumerians. It is not known for certain if Mesopotamian writing had an influence on Egyptian writing, but it is speculated to be so. The Narmer palette and plaque of Aha from the first dynasty of ancient Egypt are important works of art that some scholars say are not meant to be anything more than decorative pieces. Others argue that these documents were developed under the influence of Sumerian writing. There's the Narmer palette and the plaque of Aha. The stages of development from pure pictographs to ideographs to a phonetic alphabet were very similar to the Sumerian cuneiform evolution. It is believed that because Egypt was a land of plenty, however, writing developed much more slowly than cuneiform in Mesopotamia, which developed out of economic necessity. It is important to note, however, that even though Egyptians progressed to a 24-letter phonetic alphabet, they did not abandon earlier pictographs and ideographs in their writing. The word hieroglyph was applied by the Greeks who discovered this communicative art 2,000 years later. Hieroglyph means sacred carved writing or sacred engraved writing. Generally carved in high or low relief, hieroglyphs were used to tell of achievements of Pharaoh, who was believed to be a god. Other such scribes, as in Senmet's statue, had hieroglyphs telling of earthly achievements. Egyptian art was generally related to the belief of the afterlife. Perhaps the hieroglyphs served to explain the person's being in the first life and helped provide for a pleasant afterlife. As in Sumerian writing, the first hieroglyphs were representative devices. They progressed to abstract concepts such as this eye, meaning to cry. They then recognized the potential relationship between visual symbols and the spoken language. Again, as in Sumerian writing, they used determinative pictures to clarify ambiguous words. Because they based their phonetic alphabet on the phonetic sounds of the first letters of words that were pictographs or ideographs, acrophony, many homonyms resulted, and the use of determinatives or clarifiers was necessary. There were no grammatical rules, and hieroglyphs could be written left to right, right to left, top to bottom, and bottom to top. In addition, no vowels were used in Egyptian hieroglyphic writing, so the reader had to provide vowel sounds according to context, which was clarified by determinatives. So a seated man was used to clarify a man's name. As they combined pictographs, ideographs, and phonograms, even after they had established a 24-letter alphabet, they retained some 3,000 signs, of which 300 to 600 were used regularly. The establishment of a consonantal alphabet has been attributed to the eventual economic necessity. In addition, hieroglyphs were reduced to hieratic, a cursive version, and then to demotic, a highly cursive business hand. Scholars have thought, here's a picture of the evolution of hieroglyphics to hieratic to demotic. Scholars have said that although Egyptian scribes used the combination of pictographs, ideographs, and phonograms, they must have realized the potential of using a phonetic alphabet by itself, because the names of foreigners were written purely by consonants. Because of the tremendous knowledge required of scribes, they were held in high esteem. Schools began training young boys early. Corporal punishment was used for lazy students. Although trained in both stone-cutting and papyrus writing, scribes would specialize in one or the other to achieve technical mechanical expertise. Artist scribes who decorated royal tombs were held in especially high esteem. During the Old Kingdom pyramid construction, scribes who could both carve and paint on stone and keep records proficiently were in very high demand. Most often hieroglyphs were used for ornamental purposes on temple walls, tombs, and other buildings. They were carved in high and low relief and were often colored. Sarcophagi prepared for royal tombs were carved with scenes and hieroglyphs of ritual spiritual texts. During the Middle Kingdom, insides of coffins had scenes and ritual inscriptions. As papyrus production became mainstream, ritual mortuary texts were prepared on richly decorated papyrus and put into the coffins. The famous Book of the Dead combined various ritual texts and had beautifully decorated vignettes and illustrations to illustrate the passage of the deceased into the afterlife. Papyrus was an innovation attributed to the Egyptians. Because of its ease as a writing surface, some scholars say that it provided a maintenance of the status quo in hieroglyphic writing and thus was responsible for the rather slow development of the consonantal alphabet and the continuance of pictographs and ideographs with the consonantal alphabet. Papyrus development is also credited for the transition to hieratic for all forms of writing and to demotic for business writing. The deciphering of the hieroglyphs took place about the same time as Grotefen's deciphering of cuneiform. In 1799, Napoleon's army invaded Egypt and discovered the Rosetta Stone, which was made of basalt and was divided into 3 panels. It was shipped to Cairo, where an army general recognized the bottom panel as Greek. Many experts took rubbings from the stone and tried to decipher it. Napoleon planned to send the stone to the Louvre, but in 1802 the British invaded France and took it to the British Museum. By this time, scholars knew that the middle panel was Egyptian demotic script. A man named Thomas Young of England correctly guessed the meaning of some of the symbols. However, deciphering stood still for several years. Jean-François Champollion, a Frenchman, was a master of many languages. Working from a plaster copy of the Rosetta Stone, he began searching several lines of the top panel of hieroglyphs for symbols that might mean king, as Grotefend did. Champollion was hunting for the pharaoh Ptolemy, who was mentioned in the 3rd panel in Greek. His educated guesswork found it encircled by a round-cornered rectangle or a cartouche. He then deduced the name Cleopatra, which was also mentioned in the Greek text, and continued with this method until the mystery of hieroglyphic writing was solved. The evolution of pictographic writing to phonetic writing allowed ancient people to communicate with ease, although they retained many of their ideographic symbols. Incorporation of written communication into art was important for economic, religious, and spiritual reasons in ancient cultures, as much of their art was crafted for these purposes. Extremely important in the development of an ancient culture's writing, pictographic representation helped early man create an important mode of communication that became a necessity as population grew and as cultures interacted with other cultures. Works consulted: the book before printing, Ancient, Medieval, and Oriental by David Dieringer. Letters by James Hutchinson. The Story of Writing by Donald Jackson. Painted Rock to Printed Page, Francis Rogers. Introducing Egyptian Hieroglyphs, Barbara Watterson. Thanks for watching. Peace out.